We've got a great panel conversation here, two fantastic speakers to go into some real depth about what it's like to be part of a major important company that's also doing innovative change and change with purpose and cause. So, I'm going to start out and ask you each to introduce yourself a little bit.
Oh, thanks, Phil. And certainly welcome to Gretchen. I know you'll introduce yourself here in a second, but I'm thrilled to be here at the event and presenting with Gretchen, a key executive from Microsoft. So at Johnson Controls, I'm the Chief Customer and Digital Officer, and my team's responsible for the digital innovation agenda for the firm, our enterprise strategy, our global marketing, also responsible for the actual go-to-market, so the sales and support for our digital solutions and our customer success organization. So how do you deploy great technologies and capabilities for great outcomes? Lots of hats, but a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And Gretchen?
As Phil mentioned, I am the Vice President of our AI and Sustainability for Microsoft and the U.S. subsidiary. What does that all mean? Essentially, my team oversees our initiatives with customers and partners, really focused to drive digital transformation with our cloud and AI technologies, ultimately driving sustainable change. And that means we have to do a couple other things as we think about bringing that technology to market. We also lead coalitions, both public and private partnerships, to really look at addressing digitization opportunities by industry, driving workforce transformation, creating equitable opportunity, new jobs, and new talent in the market that we all need, and then really addressing societal impact, essentially through leveraging the technology of Microsoft and our partners to address environmental and social agendas. And so I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you all today.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for being here. And I'm going to just start with the big question about the big company. Mike, I know Johnson Controls has been at it for over 135 years. Gretchen, Microsoft is one of the largest, most well-known companies in the world, but we also know that size in today's age, if it's big, slow, and expensive, doesn't do it. We've got to be fast and nimble. What are companies doing right now to reinvent themselves and their marketplaces?
Well, maybe. Oh, go ahead. Well, let me just start. There's a couple questions there, but I think it's really important. What is driving innovation, and then how do we, as a company, take advantage of that that you just mentioned, to be nimble, to be agile, and ensure that we're not missing out, essentially, on sort of the next opportunity. And I think if you think about where we are right now, there's really never been a time when technology just has this potential to impact the world more than it is today. And that really is artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, biotech advancements, cloud computing. These are all changing and shaping the way that we are running our lives today. And so with that change comes an enormous opportunity for us to think about things very differently when you mention culture. And it's really important for us to look at our industry and lead innovation and disruption with a diverse perspective in our business strategy. And so you'll see a lot of the work that we're doing at Microsoft is to ensure, one, we're building a culture of innovation and digital innovation and technical talent, and two, that we're building this with empathy and ensuring that we are creating the opportunity to listen to our customers, listen to our partners, understand what is really required with that digitization so that we can unlock that potential. And then I would say the last thing, in order to really get that innovation going, is that we have to be really focused as learners. We have to have a growth mindset. We have to be curious. We have to ask a lot of questions. And we can't be a know-it-all in the industry. We have to actually learn, as all of our customers and partners are learning, to be able to bring the very, very best of our talent and technology and innovation into the market today.
Fantastic. And there's so many themes there, Gretchen. We'll come back to some of them. Michael, innovation, big company like JCI, how are you addressing it?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And love that answer, Gretchen. So many parallels between our two companies in trying to serve our markets and our communities. At Johnson Controls, we're transforming how buildings work. And that's kind of our mission number one. And so, how do we define that? It's about delivering significant outcomes for customers in our community. Now more than ever, you think about the pandemic and COVID and everything else. It's about healthy spaces where you can exist and play and work and do all those things. But at the same time, sustainability. So key outcomes that we're trying to deliver. And of course, in a lot of ways, technology underpins that. It's the cornerstone to how we make that real. One of the few facts many people don't know is commercial buildings consume over 40% of the annual total energy used globally. 40%. So, the ability for Johnson Controls and actually working with Microsoft to have an impact on reducing that energy spend, that energy consumption, is really, really big. As I said earlier, digital and technology is the cornerstone to making that work and bringing that together. When you say the word innovation for us, it's not just about the normal things you might associate with Johnson Controls, which is, heating and ventilation systems and fire and security and those kinds of things. But it's also applying great, intelligence and digital technologies to all of those core systems and solutions, as well as things like artificial intelligence and machine learning and that type of thing. In a lot of ways, culturally, you can think of JCI, Johnson Controls, as a $24 billion startup. We came on our journey from being a very large conglomerate, serving many industries and solution areas, and then really moving into just being, a single company that's focused on intelligent buildings. In fact, we are the largest intelligent buildings company in the world, right here in Wisconsin. So anyway, it's a wonderful journey. We're thrilled to be here, and of course, partnering with Microsoft to bring innovation to the forefront.
And let's build on that theme a little bit. You mentioned great companies having done such fantastic work separately, but you're also finding that there are things you can do together that are way better than the things that you may have been able to do just independently. Mike, you have OpenBlue. Gretchen, you have some work with AI and digital twins. Describe a little bit of what we're unleashing together, kind of that better together piece. How does that happen?
Sure.
Well,
maybe I'll kick it off and I'll flip it over to Gretchen. Our companies have a rich history of working together and delivering innovation together. Many industrials worldwide, probably don't partner as deeply and as richly as they could. And I think that's changing in a big way. At Johnson Controls, we, over the last several years, have looked at innovative partnerships as a really core way, a heartbeat, if you will, about how we can accelerate innovation, how we can deliver faster, amazing solutions to the marketplace that serve the community as well, but do it faster in conjunction with a great partner like Microsoft. So we work with Microsoft in areas like artificial intelligence, digital twinning, which is, digital twin, which is an amazing technology. Microsoft has Azure Digital Twin. We have OpenBlue Twin. They actually work together and create, if you will, a visualization and simulation of how buildings work in our case. And of course, we also exist and operate in Microsoft Azure. We have a lot of engineering teams that work together and collaborate and create 1 + 1 is 5 in terms of how we get there. So we couldn't be more thrilled with how we're working together and make that reality come to fruition.
Great.
Yeah, I'll just sort of jump onto that. I think it's a really good point that 1 + 1 = 5. And so the thing that we're doing with JCI, which is really exciting, is we share a similar ethos. And so when you think about the technology and the innovation that Johnson Control is bringing into smart buildings and smart stadiums and really fundamentally changing the way that companies need to look at sustainability, Microsoft has that same goal, that same focus, and we know we can't do that alone. So how do we take the very best of the expertise that JCI brings to the table, bring this collectively to joint customers and customers and partners, and ensure that we can be both the cloud platform we sort of mentioned, leveraging artificial intelligence and digital twin, but ultimately creating a solution that is going to be cost effective, that is going to actually save in money, that that actually is going to help reduce carbon emissions and really reach a lot of the carbon and zero carbon goals that have been set out by many of our joint customers as a top agenda item. So we're working really well together, and I think when you have partnerships that are strategic, that share a similar vision around how we want to fundamentally change through innovation and technology, you really see sort of this unlocking of incredible opportunity, and we're sort of more to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly a better together story, and I think that's something that we see on a macro basis in technology in general. You know, anyone considering this as a professional direction for their career, or technology professionals know that they've got to constantly be making partnerships. And Gretchen, you mentioned sustainability, and I know that this is extraordinarily important to both companies, and the commitments that both companies have made are really quite genuine. Could you share a little bit, because Microsoft's been so much a leader on this topic, could you share a little bit about what you're doing in the sustainability space?
Absolutely. I think sustainability, is a planet-sized challenge, and really by working at the intersection of technology and science and people, we are really helping businesses understand really what is happening with the planet, how we can respond through innovation, automation, and what are solutions that are going to ultimately help businesses be better at managing and mitigating climate risk and sustainability, both social and environmental. And this was something, really back to my point on ethos of the two companies, this is something that is not new to us. This is something that has actually been at the heart of what we've been doing for decades. And so in 2020, we made a pretty big pledge, if you will, that we would put a line in the sand and we would have a carbon negative approach by 2030. And that by 2025, we would operate with 100% renewable energy. And by 2050, we would remove all of the historical emissions that were produced by Microsoft since our inception as a company. So it was a big bet. And we knew that in order to do that, we also had to pledge to be water positive. We had to think about ourselves as zero waste by 2030. And we had to really be committed to protect more of the land that we're using and developing, and sort of the introduction of our planetary computer to help companies model the world's ecosystem. When we make commitments like this, back to that partnership, Phil, that we were just talking about, we can't do that alone. And so we had to put an innovation fund in to support the ecosystem of partners that are building these technologies on our cloud platform to be able to help really go faster, quite frankly, in the market with specializations that are needed to really go accomplish this collectively across the globe. And so we have been ambitious on our goals. We have lit up, if you will, the ecosystem of partners and customers, quite frankly, to be able to go achieve this better together. And we think that when we do this, a couple great things actually happen. First, of course, it's great for the planet. We're achieving really these sustainable goals that many companies now are putting in place. But there's another thing that's happening as well, and that is the market for green tech is going to be over $560 billion by 2030. And so it's creating a different dynamic with customers than maybe what they had thought about even 10 years ago, which is what are the new business models that I could see to really focus on with my company that can take advantage of sustainability? How do I continue to save money and reduce operating costs? We talked a little bit about that on some of the energy being spent and the need for smart buildings. But also, if we think about one thing that's really starting to take place, this is around brand reputation. So if you think about companies that are starting to build their own sustainability goals and getting committed to that from a brand perspective, a few things start to happen. Customers are known to purchase more with brands that they have an affinity to, and employees are voting with their feet, and they are actually going to companies that have a sustainability agenda, a sustainability pledge, and really connected to something that is really important now across the globe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it couldn't be a more important time to be thinking this way. I mean, I think sometimes we design markets, we wonder what the uptake's going to be. This one has to work.
Yes.
Right? We have no option other than to move towards a sustainable world. Michael, thoughts on this topic from the JCI perspective and what you're doing every day?
Sure. Thanks, Phil. And Gretchen, great talk track on what Microsoft's doing. I loved the size of the market that you described. It's just amazing. Certainly at Johnson Controls, we're committing to achieving net zero carbon emissions and key science-based targets on a number of timelines, of course. And what's fascinating to us is similar to what Gretchen just said, that digital goals and sustainability goals are starting to converge. So, I serve on the Chief Digital Officers Committee at the World Economic Forum, and it, should be no surprise, but I think it surprised all of us. In a survey that we did within the committee, it's probably the top 100 CDOs in the world, Fortune 1000 worldwide. What is their top priority? And those chief digital officers came back and said their number one priority was how do they serve the sustainability agenda through technology? And it was, it's like the coming together of two extraordinary opportunities enabling great technology and innovation and agility through that innovation of technology and serving, the greater good, the must that we must deliver on, and that is sustainability. So it was exciting and thrilling for us to be a part of that. Companies today can't talk seriously about zero carbon goals without really looking and understanding their property portfolio, their real estate, their buildings. And of course, activating technology, digital technology to make that come to life is essential to get there. What I hear all the time from CEOs is, look, we've committed to certain carbon goals, and their common ask once they've made that commitment is, okay, how do I activate and make this agenda real? And what technologies can I utilize to make that ongoing energy savings, that reduction in carbon footprint, make it real and make it ongoing, meaning annually. So we're thrilled to be on that journey, delivering technologies and capabilities that are a very core part of that agenda. Sometimes a reduction of 20 to 40% of that energy is possible in terms of how you operate buildings. And of course, we're partnered with Microsoft on that same agenda and that with that same appetite of being a real activator on this value chain.
Great. Go ahead, Gretchen.
And I was just going to add one more thing. I think you made such a good point around the fact that most companies have this on the agenda, and then that survey alone. The maturity of every company, though, sits on the spectrum of I have a desire, I know how to do it, or where do I actually essentially get started? Your point sort of on just even real estate and smart buildings. And so we've announced a Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. It's a SaaS-based offering that essentially will help accelerate some of that work, including more accurate carbon accounting data that helps you really understand and inventory. Essentially, what Mike was saying is having a starting point to really understand, like, hey, what do I need to know where I stand, and then how do I automate real time with the data sources I need to be able to make those changes against those commitments. And so it's spot on. It's not only sort of, I would say, top agenda, but many are very at the beginning stages of, okay, where do I get started? And so certainly that's, again, where Microsoft and JCI come together to certainly help.
Yeah, sure. And another topic that comes up quite a bit is ESG in general, a broader term. How do companies work, and particularly tech companies, work with their community? Because I think there's an argument that they could be very separate from the community, because tech could be separate, or it could be very community-based. Any thoughts? And I know, Gretchen, you have some real passion around communities and diversity of thought that comes through working with communities.
Yeah, no, I think that your point is a good one, which is oftentimes, and that was a little bit of my point earlier around innovation and empathy and listening to really what the customers are asking for. Community is really exactly the same. One thing that we understand about when we want to build this culture of empathy and being able to have sort of diverse of thought and perspective, we need proximity. We need to be where the communities are and understand what is unique to that community, and what quite frankly is required. And oftentimes it boils down to a couple of things. It's economic development and growth, economic equality of opportunity and access. It's about, finding jobs and creating the right path for skills, both in traditional and non-traditional talent, so that we can go after essentially and build these communities of the future with the right talent and workforce development that's required for what technology is going to ask us in the next 10 to 15 years down the road.
It's a beautiful thing to hear the word empathy used. I think 35 years ago, if you had told me that top executives at top companies were genuinely going to be talking about empathy as an important corporate value and sustainability, I might have been suspect. But now it is without a doubt top of mind and genuine part of the agenda. Mike, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the reality is there's not enough great trained people out in the community based on the need that is required. I mean, we have tremendous needs, Microsoft and Johnson Controls, to deliver, trained individuals that can help us innovate and deliver these great capabilities, that drive things like sustainability, et cetera. We're at Johnson Controls investing and expanding our college and community programs, how we're sponsoring degrees and certificate programs in like core technologies that of course you would associate with buildings, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, fire and security, and that kind of thing. But also importantly, the innovation around digital and automation and AI and systems that are really fueling some of those new core platforms, those new technologies across the world. Part of this heartbeat is how do we equip members in that community to really help them get employable skills and a pathway to really amazing careers wherever they're choosing to study in whatever pathway. And the realities are folks that know those core platforms, industrial platforms and that also understand digital are far and few between. It's like the secret sauce of being able to understand not only the core engineering platforms, but also the technology platforms. And so we're really excited to have a deep commitment to driving that forward. Now, putting on top of that the ESG commitment and how we hope to deliver against that goal of sustainability and have that as a key performance metric. We also use that with our suppliers and have truly launched a whole cohort around training around that for supplier emissions, et cetera, is really important. The last thing is, for really great innovation, you also have to have a really diverse community and diverse in thought as well as composition. And so women leaders are really important to us, minority leaders really important to us, and we're committed to doubling those numbers in those communities as we drive this forward. So, last thing on this is around culture, and that is, as I said earlier in the discussion, we really see ourselves as a $24 billion startup. It's all about fast moving to innovation. And the only way you can drive that is innovation that's relevant and that means something to both the community and the environment and the people. And to make that happen, it really comes down to having a resilient, supportive culture that delivers against innovation and supports it and fulfills it by great workers and great programs around those workers.
It builds in. Gretchen, oh, sorry, you were going to make a point.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to ask you about women in cloud at some point. So go ahead and make your point. But
no, I think I was going to add on to that we're at a place now that you do not have to have a job in the high tech industry to require technical skills. Digitization is going to hit sort of every role across every industry, and really about 27% of roles are going to need to be new based on the technology that is there, and over 50% of employees are going to have to be reskilled to just stay competitive. Well, what happens when COVID's now hit? People working from home, hybrid work experience starting to happen, and many of the underrepresented communities are getting further and further behind on the skills that are going to be required just by simple barriers that we can't actually reach and get access. And so part of the work, and when you think about ESG, is not just what our, sort of diversity goal at Microsoft will be, or the investment that we're making in things like minority banks, suppliers, which Mike mentioned as well, the ecosystem and innovation funds, but like, how do we actually go ensure that we're creating a funnel of talent that is diverse? And I love that, and diverse in thought and diverse in composition. It's so critical that we as industry leaders really focus here so that we can really take advantage of the opportunity that we're going to see ahead, to really stay on top of the innovation that we're delivering on.
And I've been super impressed by the Women in Cloud. Can you share a little bit of that effort with the group?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I'm a co-founder of Women in Cloud. Essentially, it's an organization really focused on developing economic opportunity for female entrepreneurs. And so if you think about the biggest challenge of creating sort of diversity of talent within technology-based businesses, many times these female founders go out of business, and they go out of business because they don't have access to capital, they don't have access to pipeline, they don't have access to RFPs or customer opportunities. And so how do we fundamentally break that cycle, create an opportunity, a book of business, so that these incredible leaders and the technology that we want to see in the market can actually create some momentum and some run? And so Women in Cloud essentially is basically government policy. It's around the go-to-market and opportunity to build for female entrepreneurs, as well as community building. And through this international group, we'll see about $1 billion of additional capital be generated from the work with Women in Cloud. So we're just getting started. There's many, many coalitions focused in similar areas, and the more we can bring these together and focus on really changing the diversity landscape, especially in technology roles, I think we're all going to really be the great beneficiaries of all of that.
That's just fantastic work. We applaud what you're doing, and thank you for it. Really, I mean, and I think I'll probably have a few people I'm going to be sending your way who will be eager to join.
Look forward to it. Look forward to it.
But really, what could have been more exciting thing to talk about? These two companies having such impact across the globe, working in the areas of innovation, cause, sustainability, community, ESG. I want to thank you both for your time and efforts, and give you one last chance to throw something in if you have another log for the fire before we wrap up. Mike, any final thoughts?
Well, just that, I want to especially thank Gretchen for spending time with us. Microsoft is a wonderful partner to Johnson Controls and the community worldwide.
All right, fantastic. And Gretchen?
Well, I just want to sort of ditto that. I wanted to thank, Mike, yourself, Phil, you for including me in this conversation. It's so valuable to start the dialogue because it really sparks an opportunity to think about how do we innovate, how do we make sort of sustainable change, and how do we get activated. And so having this opportunity, Phil, to bring us together to have that conversation is incredible. And I think for us in partnership with Johnson Control, we're aligned so closely as we think about innovation, we think about sustainability, we think about our communities, we think about skilling. These things come together, and let's just not stop the conversation now. Let's make sure we continue past this session, and please join me and reach out on LinkedIn and Twitter.
And the more good news was there's plenty of ways to on-ramp into this world. There's and people are needed. Good people are needed every day to bring this work forward.